Hey guys, Ryu here with another video for Blender. In this one we're going to be talking about how you can improve your portfolio, how you can create beautiful renders, how camera works, how to frame something, how to light something, how to post-processing something to create this image. Now this image is a thumbnail for our upcoming vanilla course for Blender 3.0. It's gonna be coming up very soon, first half of January. The course is basically done, as you can see from the render. We're just simply making sure everything is perfect and, you know, tidying up the loose ends. Now this course will teach you vanilla Blender workflow. However, if you like to use add-ons like Hardops and Boxcutter, you can go ahead very easily and just, you know, implement them during this course. So the whole idea behind this course was to make sure that people who are coming to Blender and also those who are still struggling with tools and how Blender works, to simply, you know, show them how they can improve their hard surface workflow. Now this course is going to be quite unique because we're going to be combining SAP-D workflow with booleans, so we're going to be running into many issues, interesting conundrums, and we're going to be solving all these puzzles with shading, you know, modifiers, etc. So it's a really good course for literally everyone. It's not complicated, so if you're a beginner in Blender, you should be fine, no problem. All videos are real-time with commentary, so you just can simply follow along and model with me. Now, this design is very organic, which is why we decided to go for a SAP-D workflow. It's kind of like a, you know, based on a concept of a fish. So it's pretty cool. I think it's, you know, it looks really awesome. I love this design. Had a lot of fun doing this. So like I said, the course is coming very soon, guys. I hope you're gonna enjoy the content. Like I said, I had a tremendous fun creating this one and it was a great experience. Now let's talk about this render, because, you know, framing and lighting and everything, it's an art, and mastering this takes time and patience, but it's gonna give you amazing rewards, because that is what clients gonna see on your portfolio, and you will get contacted by clients and get simply job offers, because that's how it works. Now if you're gonna go to Blender, this is a view in Blender, this is in LookDev, but the final render was created in cycles. We're gonna be looking here in LookDev because the feedback is a little bit faster and it's gonna be easier to see. Now let me just check if my camera is not locked to view. Okay, cool. So let me just pan out and let me show you you know, what's up, and I'm gonna talk you through all the settings. Now let's talk about framing here, because framing is quite interesting. You can see the framing comes from the bottom. So if I'm going to go to the side view, orthographic, you see that the camera is actually pointing upwards, and also is pointing slightly from an angle. So it's about, you know, 30 degrees angle from the bottom. Now let me tell you why this is so. If you frame something from the bottom, you're gonna empower it. Okay, if you look at, for example, pictures of CEOs or some important figures, they always slightly either on the eye level or slightly below to make them look more impressive. If you look at pictures, for example, of some fighters, boxers, etc., they usually are shot from the bottom to make them stronger. If you look at pictures of women, they're gonna be shot from the top, okay, slightly from the top to make them look more endearing. So in this case, I wanted to make it more powerful, even though the whole idea of the drone is quite cute, but I wanted to make it, you know, more powerful in terms of visuals, because it's a military drone, as indicated by the gun. You know, you have a gun here, so obviously this is some kind of a battle drone or some recon drone. So, you know, this angle sort of emphasizes it, and it's really important to make sure that your angle kind of corresponds with the idea you're trying to sell, because everything is important. Okay, focal length of the camera is quite long. If I'm gonna go here, you can see it's 250 millimeters, and that gives me a sort of a compact view. If I'm gonna change the view to a wider angle, so if I'm gonna, you know, zoom in here and deselect that, and I'm going to press page down with machine tools and alt click on smart view, I'm gonna get another camera here. So I'm gonna lock that to view. Okay, lock to view, and I'm going to move out a little bit, and you see that with 50mm, for example, camera, I cannot actually achieve this kind of a strong look, because the pictures, you know, it's much more distorted. It's a wider angle of camera. We're talking about 50mm in here. If I'm gonna go wider than this, 35, it's gonna be even worse. So this sort of makes my drone look smaller and the rotors look bigger, because the rotors are closer to the camera, and that's the problem. Okay, So let me just remove this very quickly and let me jump back to this camera. Now you can see that the drone is much more powerful, is bigger than the rotors visually, and that's what I want. I want to emphasize the gun, I want to emphasize the face, because the face is a focus of this render. The rotors are just, you know, a framing, okay? Now cropping, let's talk about cropping because it's really important, okay? The way this image is cropped is essential, right? Nothing in this image is accidental, okay? The distance from between the eyes and the edge of the frame is much smaller than from the bottom of the gun to the bottom of the frame. This gives him a little bit more room here and makes it more elevated visually, okay? Then the rotors are cut in half because they're not as important as the face. The face is something that we're gonna be drawn to, and clearly here we can see eyes, mouth, nose, which means we're gonna see a face immediately because we are drawn to face as human beings, so we will be drawn there instantly, okay? When you enter the image, the first thing you're gonna look at is the face, and then you're gonna start moving about, which is why this bright element here of this rotor doesn't really conflict with the composition, because this is much stronger than this, even though this element has higher contrast and is much brighter, okay? There's a bit of a distance here from the fin to the bottom. This rotor here, there's a slight gap between the edge of the rotor and the edge of the frame. So you could either crop it through it, or you could just, you know, leave a bit of a gap. We have separation here between this element here and the amount of the rotor. We have separation between the gun and the bottom of the chin of this bot. We have a separation here, okay? We have a separation here, and we have a separation here. You got all the elements are being basically separated. You can see through the rotor to see the back of the drone. So everything is really important. Even this bit sticking out here is important because it gives you the full idea of how this drone is structured, okay? So angling this was probably a 10-minute job, okay? I needed to make sure that everything is peachy and nothing is really being obstructed or looking weird. So that was really crucial, and that takes time, guys, okay? So if you want to learn how to crop something, look at really good photography, especially portraits, because portraiture is when you will learn how to crop something properly. If you go to my portfolio and you can look at how I'm cropping my portraits, you'll understand how it works. But like I said, it takes time. There is always a breathing space underneath. There is a larger distance between the, you know, between the chin and the bottom than the eyebrow and the top. So this comes with time and practice, and eventually becomes like a muscle memory. But cropping is one of the most difficult things in photography to master, and when you actually master cropping, your image is gonna, you know, enter another level. And the same goes to renders, because that is what's going to enable you to bring your model closer to the viewer and create sort of a 3D effect. Because when you look at this image here, this drone basically is coming out of the page towards you. That's how powerful this is. And this is further amplified by a bit of a depth of field here on these elements, because you can see here this part is already a bit fuzzy, which means it's falling out of focus, which amplifies this depth of the image, okay? So that's that. So that's cropping, that's framing. Now let's talk about lighting, because lighting is, you know, is also very important. If I turn off this transparency, go to here to my look depth, and I'm gonna switch to EV for a sec. I will show you where the light is coming from. Okay, let me just unlock this from view. There we go. Let me unlock this from view. So the lighting is coming from basically behind me, okay? So it's coming almost behind the camera, which is interesting. It's not directly above the camera, because if it was above the camera, it would be over there, but it's slightly offset, and that's really important. Light always should be offset from the way the camera is lined up with the model. So never put your light above the camera or behind the camera, because you will end up with a flat lighting. This one creates a bit of a shadow and drama, but at the same time lights both sides of the drone, so it's not as dark, okay? So this light is quite strong, even though it's a bit diffused. Sunset, there is a massive angle and gives us a bit more drama, so that's, you know, that's really important. So that's how the lighting has been done here. So you can see the light comes a little bit from the behind of the model, so shines on 2/3 of the model away from the camera, and this one is a bit in the shadow, which gives us really nice rim and highlight, and also gives us separation, and also gives us interesting shadows and drama. Okay, let's talk about depth of field. Now, if you wanted to render this with a depth of field, you will need to focus on something really close to the camera, like for example the eyes. You could do it manually, or you could do it simply by clicking here and picking an object. And you need to pay attention to where the origin point is, because origin point is what this camera will be focusing on. In this case, we're going to be focusing on the right eye, which means this one's going to be sharper than this one. That is not good, so you need to fix that. In order to fix that, you would probably need to focus manually. So what I would suggest is grabbing this depth of field, turning these bollocks off, tapping here something like 70 meters, because it's probably going to be close enough, zooming in on the object, okay, and then manually adjusting sharpness here, so you're sure that this is sharp. These decals, by the way, should be slightly offset. Hang on, let me just double click that, D, Alt adjust, and just move them a little bit, you know, away from the surface. There we go. And now you can define your aperture, and aperture, you know, will define how much in the focus we have. Now remember that this camera is facing at 30 degrees, which means the field of focus is gonna go across the model. So the smaller the aperture, the smaller the field of focus is gonna be. And because it's going diagonally, okay, you need to make sure that both eyes, or at least the first one, is in focus, and a little bit of the chassis, okay? So I would go with something like maybe 2.8, but you could go as aggressively as 1.4, which is gonna be extremely shallow depth of field, especially with this focal length. So if I'm gonna focus on my model now, you can see that, you know, this bit is already falling out of focus. So this area here is already out of focus, and also the front is going to be slightly out of focus, okay? The only thing in focus is going to be the eye, maybe this area, and that's it, okay? So if you want to make sure that the front is in focus, you know, switch it to something like 2.8, and it's going to improve the situation, okay? Now this will allow you to sort of blur out the back of the drone, and it's going to allow you to blend it a little bit better in Photoshop with your background, because the background has to be blurred, okay? That's really important. So you need to think ahead when you're creating your image what you want to do with it, because it's really important, okay? When I'm gonna be rendering this, right, I'm gonna be rendering this without a background. So in my case, I'm gonna simply have no background and make sure that, you know, the background is set to transparent. Then I'm just rendering it in cycles and popping it into Photoshop. Now in Photoshop, you can see that I have a ton of layers, and there's a lot of work being done on this render. Now we can talk about it, you know, sort of one by one. So first of all, my background, you can see that the background is actually a regular picture of a sort of a foggy city. I'm not sure where it is from, but quite frankly, it doesn't matter, as long as you have like a neutral image. And then I added a sky texture to it from, both pictures are from either Unsplash or, you know, something like Pixabay or whatever. They're just free stock images. They both blurred, which is really important, okay? Clouds and the image are blurred, and they kind of combine, you know, are combined together. There's a bit of contrast popped in onto it, and then I'm simply dropping my drone on top of it. Now, the reason why I'm, you know, rendering a drone without any background is because when I control click that, I can select it, you know, perfectly around the drone, and I can manipulate with my drone in Photoshop. So I can, you know, blur it a bit, or add a bit of contrast to it selectively without having to, you know, affect the entire image. Next thing I need to do is I need to make sure that the background and the foreground, which means the drone and the background, they consistent in terms of color, shadows, etc. So I need to, you know, fix that. So I'm adding a layer of Infinite Color, which is one of my favorite plugins, which allows me to fix contrast and coloring and harmonize all the tones within the image. Then I'm going to add a little bit of clouds, and the way I do that is I usually use brushes, okay? You can go to websites like, for example, evatoelements.com or DeviantArt, you know, if you want something free, and simply grab some brushes. I have tons of packs that allow me to create some really cool effects. So for example, I can show you mist brushes, which are, you know, one of these. and they basically massive brushes. So if I'm going to grab a layer in here, you can see how they look, and simply you select a color from your canvas, make it bigger, and boom, you stamp once and you're done. And then you simply edit this effect. You can just remove it from certain parts of the bot. You can add it to certain parts of the bot or your model, and you can stamp it from the top as well if you want to, because there are all kinds of them. And this is how I create my clouds, guys. It's really easy, okay? So nothing complicated. And here you can also grab, for example, stuff like these brushes. They're also amazing. This kind of smoke brushes, they're fantastic if you want to create like a bottom smoke, something like this, you see what I mean? And then you simply edit that in Photoshop to make sure that this effect is consistent and make sense with your image. Then I'm adding some color lookups. Color lookups are here on the bottom. It's a very interesting filter that you can add to your images. So if I'm gonna, for example, add color lookup here to this one, you will see that you're gonna end up with very interesting effects. If I scroll through this, and of course you can, for example, go with another blend here, blend modes, change it to, for example, soft light, reduce the fill and opacity, and grab some really interesting effect for your image from the lookup table. So this is a very, very good filter to use. And then I'm working on some contrast here, so I'm simply adding a bit more contrast to my image. You can do it with stuff like curves, so you can add curves here, switch here to luminosity so you'll not be affecting saturation. Grab this handle here, okay, and for example click and drag down the dark tones and click and drag down bright tones, and you're simply adding local contrast. You see if it's too dark, double click here, and you can use blend diff tool, hold alt and remove the effect from underlying dark layers, for example in my case, because it's a little bit too dark, and boom, you got yourself a localized contrast. Okay, really easy. What I do is I just use a filter, so I'm gonna go here to filter, Nik Collection, and use something like a filter called Pro Contrast, which is brilliant. It's one of my favorite filters. If I reset this, actually this one's a different filter, hang on. Pro Contrast is somewhere here. There we go. So you can, with one slider, you can adjust contrast on different elements of your image. So this is a really cool filter to use. Then I'm simply adding text and, all the logos. I'm borrowing colors from my canvas to make it look more consistent. So there are no random colors. And adding some more fog here, you can see, just to make sure that these rotors are less important. You see that it just simply makes them disappear, and the attention has been redirected to my main model. Then I'm running another really interesting filter which allows me to add a vignette. You can do this through Camera Raw filter. If you go to Camera Raw filter and you go to effects here, let me just collapse this window a bit so you can see. If you go to effects here, you can add a vignette to your image, okay, and you can play with the settings here. So you could do it this way. And then I'm brightening in the middle. So what I'm doing is very simply, I'm bringing this image to Camera Raw. Guys, these are very basic tricks, okay? It's all about basic tricks. You don't need anything complicated to fix your image, really, you don't. Watch this. All you need to do is increase, exposure of the entire image a little bit, right? Then press OK here, okay? Then Alt click on the mask, grab a brush, make sure it's a regular brush. So we're going to grab this soft brush here and close that. And simply with a white brush here and maybe flow set to like 50%, just click here and brighten it up. And now you can see that my middle is brighter, okay? So this is literally what I've done. What I've done here is just a bit more subtle, okay? And that's the final image. So this is how this image was created. So this kind of a work takes time, I agree, but it's worth it because remember, you're putting this on your portfolio just once and you leave it there, and it's your business card. So your business card should look as good as possible, because this is how you're going to be attracting clients and basically getting paid, because if someone likes your portfolio, they're going to contact you and they're going to offer you jobs. And so when you present something properly in your portfolio, it's going to send a very, very specific message to the client saying that, you like to bring things to the end. You are a perfectionist. You not just rendering something and dropping random shit on your portfolio, but you actually care about every single detail in that image. And a lot of people who are recruiting people or who are trying to, for example, they work for graphic designer companies, etc. They look for some models for advertisements, etc. Now, these people are usually professionals. They, art directors. They're people who have degrees in art or design, so they know exactly what they're looking for, and they will be looking for people that they can deliver. Just to give you one example, recently we've been approached by Shell, by a company who actually produces a commercial for Shell. It's a TV commercial, so and they purchased one of our models. We didn't even have to model anything, and they simply wanted one of the models that was basically on our portfolio. So you really need to make sure that your portfolio is solid, because you never know who's gonna see that and who will actually be interested in hiring you or buying something directly from your portfolio, because these offers are also coming in. Okay, alright guys, well, that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed the vid. Now this course, like I said, is going to be coming up very soon. The first half of January, we're going to be talking a lot about design. We're going to be talking about how to create something that looks good from any angle, because when you look at this model, that doesn't matter what I do with it, it looks good from any angle. I can shoot it from the front, I can shoot it from the back, I can shoot it from the side, I can shoot it from this angle, I can shoot it from this angle. It's gonna be like a Mantis / Jesus. So it doesn't really matter where I'm gonna be looking from. It just looks decent. So this is a key of design, and we're going to be covering that as well. Now, in addition to that, we created a small PDF for you guys that actually talks about 5 most important things in design. There's a link to the free PDF in the video description, so if you're interested, just hop on the link and grab it. This course is coming up on January, first half of January. So I hope to see you there. It's going to be tremendous fun. Like I said, vanilla course for 3.0. But again, if you want to use add-ons, you can. No problem. You can easily follow this with Hardups and Boxcutter. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.